The distinction between the idealized Israel of the Bible and the concrete political reality of the modern state of Israel is a profound lesson in how human pride, power, and political corruption can distance a nation from its foundational spiritual roots. When we look at the Israel of the biblical narrative, it was established not as a showcase for human perfection or political arrogance, but as a nation bound to a holy covenant with specific, strict commandments to love mercy, walk humbly, and execute absolute justice for all people. The Bible itself is unsparingly honest about the fact that ancient Israel consistently failed to live up to this high calling, as prophet after prophet, from Isaiah and Jeremiah to Amos and Micah, boldly and fearlessly exposed the rot within their own society. The biblical prophets did not cover up the sins of their leaders. Instead, they loudly condemned the greedy rulers who took bribes, the corrupt judges who denied justice to the weak, the wealthy landowners who trampled the poor, and the overarching pride that caused the people to rely on their own military might and alliances rather than on moral righteousness. In the modern era, the State of Israel exists as a secular, modern political nation-state operating on the world stage, and like any other secular government, it is deeply plagued by the universal human vices of political corruption, systemic sin, and nationalistic pride. While many people romantically or ideologically confuse the modern state with the ancient biblical kingdom, the raw facts show a contemporary political landscape marked by severe ethical failures, including high-profile bribery and fraud scandals reaching the absolute highest levels of government, institutionalized greed, and a hardening of pride that often ignores the weight of human suffering. In contemporary times, the ongoing legal battles surrounding political leaders, the exploitation of power by hardline factions to aggressively seize land, the systemic disenfranchisement of marginalized communities, and the arrogant reliance on technological and military supremacy echo the exact warnings that the ancient prophets shouted in the streets of Jerusalem. Someone who truly understands the biblical narrative knows that God never gave any nation a blank check to commit sins, abuse power, or act with impunity, because the central message of Scripture is that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a disgrace to any people. By examining the current geopolitical reality, we see that modern Israel is not immune to the corrupting nature of absolute power and its internal political warfare, secular scandals, and moral compromises demonstrate a deep deviation from the ethical demands of justice and humility outlined in the ancient texts. Therefore, recognizing the sins, pride, and systemic corruption of the modern nation is not a rejection of history, but an exercise in truth-telling, proving that when any political entity prioritizes national pride and political survival over justice and moral integrity, it inevitably falls into the same traps of corruption that have brought down empires and kingdoms throughout human history. The presence of false prophets, systemic deception, and evil operating within the highest halls of power is a tragic common denominator linking the political landscapes of both Israel and America today, proving that when nations abandon moral integrity, they open the door to devastating corruption. Throughout history, and within ancient texts, a false prophet is never defined merely as someone who fails to predict the future. Rather, a false prophet is an aggressive, deceitful voice that tells people exactly what their itching ears want to hear, whispering comfortable lies, validating national pride, and shouting peace, peace when there is no peace. In both modern Israel and modern America, these false prophets manifest as manipulative political strategists, corrupt media personalities, and compromised religious figures who manipulate the sacred faith of ordinary citizens to rubber stamp the wicked actions of rulers. In Israel, this dark reality is exposed through entrenched leadership that fiercely clings to power, utilizing deep deception to shield itself from massive criminal fraud and bribery trials, while stoking the fires of nationalist arrogance and ignoring basic human rights. This political deception tricks citizens into believing that military supremacy and harsh oppression equal safety, while the internal moral fabric of the nation is completely corroded by leaders who prioritize their personal survival over divine justice. Simultaneously, America faces its own massive crisis of structural evil in power, driven by a corrupted political system where dark money floods elections. Special interests dictate the laws of the land, and truth is systematically slaughtered for partisan gain. The false prophets of America stand behind opulent pulpits and television cameras, twisting spiritual principles to worship political idols, defending blatant corporate greed, and dividing the populace through manufactured hatred while completely ignoring the biblical command to defend the poor, the fatherless, and the oppressed. This toxic blend of power and lies creates a dangerous environment where corrupt leaders in both nations justify horrific actions on the world stage under the guise of security or destiny, showing a complete lack of the fear of God. When evil is institutionalized in power, truth becomes an enemy of the state, and the voices who dare to expose the rot are immediately attacked, slandered, and marginalized by the powerful elite. True accountability demands that we look directly past the slick propaganda, the arrogant flags, and the deceptive speeches to judge these leaders by the actual fruit of their actions. Lies may hold power for a season, but history and divine truth prove that any nation built on the foundation of arrogance, systemic corruption, and the exploitation of the weak will eventually face the inescapable consequences of its own moral decay. Therefore, standing boldly against false prophets and exposing the darkness in both Israel and America is not a betrayal of country, but a fearless defense of ultimate truth and an absolute refusal to let evil rule unchallenged. Please feel free to follow, subscribe, comment, like, and share. This helps you to stay connected to me, and it helps me to remain here creating more content for you. Thank you, love. Always, Maria DC Santiago.